Within the room and then go to the online? Okay. Mary de Haas, are you on the line? Mary de Haas from South Africa, who's the Director of Laws, honoris causa, human rights activist. Mary, if you can join us.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, we cannot see you. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay. You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Right. No, look, Horace asked me just to mention because everything I say has to do with the state of policing in South Africa, which, of course, we will hear more about because Horace himself has suffered through blowing the whistle on this particular group. And there's a trial in Durban going on at the moment. It's taken me 40 years to get this case on trial, where the Caton Manor unit burst into a room and shot dead a boy who just turned 16 and was sleeping on his couch. And it's a very strong case, but we haven't been able to get a prosecution of this or others. It's taken me 2 or 3 years to get here. And we are afraid that the prosecutor is not going to go out of his way to do a good job of it, put it that way, because he's not using crucial evidence. The case is on in court right now. I sent Horace a picture of some protesters about it. It's putting the family, the parents of this boy who've suffered immensely for 14 years, through absolute hell, because they're having to drive up and down from where they live on the north coast to Durban to make matters worse. And the road is not good at the moment. There's roadworks and it's a busy road, and they're having to come down every day, and it's about the time of the year that their son was killed when they remember his death. So keep them in mind, and as I said, Horace asked me to. Okay, now I am basically talking about the way in which the family of whistleblower Patricia Mashale has suffered very badly, the actual impact of it. But I want to also start by saying I think it's very important for the whole world to know we have a constitution which is widely acclaimed, and it is being trashed. It is being ignored by the ministers themselves, by people who take an oath of office to it. Ministers are running departments themselves, which is unconstitutional, starting with the police. Okay, now, in this case, I think the case of Patricia Mashale is well known. Patricia will be able to tell you more about the case brought against her, the malicious case. She went into hiding almost 2.5 years ago after she had sent some information to the National Commissioner, who had asked for it when she'd spoken to him, about gross corruption in the Free State Province management. The material was sent back to the Free State management people, and the persecution started at work. They tried to bring a disciplinary against her at work. It took them a while to do that, and then they dismissed her illegally. But she also got, because she and George, the former husband, have worked for the police, for unions, for exposed corruption for years, and they have a wide support base in the police. And she heard from the police that they were going to arrest her and make her disappear. And they do that. They'll rock up at night and take you away, and then you may be found hanging in the cell. Over 400 people a year die at the hands of police in South Africa, 200 of them in police custody. So it's very easy to kill someone if you're hunted down by the police. And that's what's been happening to Patricia for almost 2.5 years. All because she did what she was supposed to do, and I want to make this point very strong. We have anti-corruption legislation. If you suspect corruption and you don't report it, you can be charged for it, quite apart from having taken an oath of office. So she was doing what the law required, and she's being hounded for it. She'll tell you about the malicious case that's on. Now, I'm speaking mainly about the impact on her and her family of what has happened, which has been basically almost 2.5 years spent in a mixture of solitary confinement and house arrest, because she's had to leave the family home, which is under surveillance still by the police, to keep herself alive and for the sake of her children. Okay, well, I'm contextualizing this within our own constitution, which is informed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And if you look at that, and if you look, the other important charter is the Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights. Now, these emphasize that the family must be protected. It is the fundamental social unit in which children must be secure and protected. And what has happened to Patricia Mashale's children is the exact opposite of that. The family that she has loved and cared for, been there, supported financially with their father, has been fragmented, and the children have been stressed, as you will hear, more than stressed, worried out of their minds about their mother's safety. Okay, now, so we have this constitutional protection of the family. There's also really good children's legislation, which also is supposed to protect the family, the Child Care Act. And that, I see, has also been ignored. I've been following other cases. Right. Now, that's the Child Justice Act 2. Concord, even Concord has come into this and said, look, if a mother is, for example, imprisoned, every care must be taken. Try not to give her custodial sentence because it's against the best rights of the child. For a primary caregiver, and Patricia, one of Patricia's 4 children is a minor child. Right. Now, I want to talk, as I said, this is the context that I'm talking about, the impact of it. Right. Now, I think when we talk about the health of the family, and especially the health of Patricia, health is, of course, mind and body. The two are intimately connected. If you look at the World Health Organization definition, it is a total sense of mind, body, spiritual, psychological well-being. Right. Now, the type of stress that Patricia's living under and the children are living under have a serious impact on health, physical health as well, as I shall show. Because there's that mind-body connection, which is really well documented. Among other things, an anthropologist who does a lot of stuff on this.
And Mary, we discussed some of that on our last panel with the mind-body connection and PTSD and stress-related illnesses. But I want to jump ahead a little bit because we really want you to talk about what should South Africa do to protect whistleblowers. We know there are things on paper. How do we? Yes, but
well, there's plenty of stuff, as you said, including what came up during all the isolation of COVID. I've explained that what Patricia's had to live with, away from the children, is a mixture of that isolation and that house arrest and solitary confinement. Right. Now, okay, so we'll skip over that then. The stress levels has impacted very seriously on Patricia's health. She hasn't even been, her medical aid was cut when her salary, she wasn't paid with our salary. She can't go to state facility because she would have been tracked down. Now, I have case studies of how the police can even get at people when they're in the hospital. Sometimes they get poisoned, or sometimes they're even attacked in hospitals. She couldn't go near a state health facility. That's how bad it is in South Africa. And I think the worst thing she found of all was being away from the children. She said that. I'll skip then the impact on, well, the impact on her. Last year, there was a malicious arrest warrant put out. There were police sent to track her down. There was a red alert put out for her because it was maliciously said she had breached a court order, which is not good. That's the extent to which they went.
Mary, I think this is a good point for us to pivot to the next speaker because I think we want to get to the how to protect whistleblowers and how to help them. Well, why don't we save that? Why don't we put a pin in that? We'll come back to it because I want to give everybody who's on the panel a chance to speak. And we only have a little bit more time, and I want to give everybody else a chance, and then we can come back. And I think what you're talking about, the impact to children, is something we were talking about on the last panel as well, and that is, I think, a really important issue. We need to start thinking about some of these solutions and how to focus attention on that. I wanted to introduce Tony Haripersadh from South Africa. He is a family member of the South African who was assassinated, the whistleblower that we all know as Babita Deokaran. Tony, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, Jane. Jacqueline, thank you, I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear
Please
you fine.
go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. I must express my sincere thanks and gratitude to Ari and Jacqueline for affording me the privilege to represent the family of Babita Deokaran. And today, just being a part of this conference enlightens us so much about the international impact of whistleblowing. And it helps us to know that we are not just the only one in South Africa. However, initially Ari had asked me to speak on the trauma and the stress the family has to deal with post this incident, Babita's assassination. Well, we are still in a state of hurt and mourning. And as a family, we are hurt very deeply. The initial shock, the horror, the despair, and the anger, and all the emotions, they continue to surface up regularly in our lives as the family of Babita. Now, just to say a little bit about Babita before I speak about how the family feels, is that Babita was someone that made the family very proud of her achievements. And, she was a single mother, very dedicated to her child, the upbringing of her child. And she was a very conscientious and dedicated employee of the state. We've watched Babita grow in the family from a child to a youth and to a very remarkable, fine lady that has held a very responsible position in government office. And it is her integrity and her righteousness that she stood for, so much so that when she uncovered this 1 billion rand, close to 1 billion rand fraud at just one single hospital in Tembisa, she was in a position to stop the payments because she was the chief director at the Department of Health in Gauteng. And when she did this, she did inform her superiors that she thinks her life is in danger, and she did raise the flags that she felt that she was threatened and she was, very insecure, but nothing was done, unfortunately. We are very saddened by the fact that she did not get state protection, neither did she get any other help from the state to protect her at this point and time in her life. However, we are even sadder to hear that while she uncovered this fraud, senior officials in the Gauteng Department of Health had suspended her. Being a chief director in the main office in the Department of Health, she was sent to a local clinic as a junior staff at a junior position, and she was sent for a period of time to go and serve in this junior clinic rather than being at her office. And I'm sure, it must have humiliated her. She suffered during this time of her suspension, and this was unknown to the family. she did not disclose this to us because she did not want us to know inner details about what was happening in government circle, and I think she protected the information that she had. And after her assassination, we have learned that all these information was handed over to the State Investigation Unit, and she was the key witness in the forthcoming trial, which did not materialize because before that she was assassinated. Now, as a family, we still go through this physical, emotional, and mental stress regularly. It is difficult sometimes because I think, Jacqueline, like you said, the nightmares sometimes don't go away. They just reoccur, and the stress, the family's traumatized. And what hurts us most was that she was inseparable. Her daughter and her were inseparable. Her daughter was just 16 years of age when Babita was assassinated. The family had to take some decisions regarding the child, and we had to sell the home, the luxury family home that mother and child lived in, and the family had to move in with her aunt so that, she could get the proper upbringing. But, I have to say that we are very hurt about the fact that at the time of Babita's passing, there was absolutely no trauma counsel afforded to members of the family, and in particular, her child. There was zero trauma counseling offered from the government to assist her child in what she's been going through. But we are grateful for the fact that her child is very resilient, and her child has done well. She is now 19 years old. She matriculated last year with the DUX Award from her school, and she's at first year university. She is coping well. But we also still feel the effects of this huge loss that our family has sustained, in that when we look at the corruption in South Africa, and we look at fraud, and we look at all the wrong things that are taking place, very especially in government, and I think it's no secret that the outcome of the recent elections in South Africa has spoken for itself. And I think to a great degree, a lot of people and citizens of this country, peace-loving citizens of this country, have lost faith in the present government. And therefore, we find that this government that was the majority government that ruled this country, democratic country, for the past 30 years, has lost that major status of being the ruling party. And therefore, we now, for the first time, after 30 years, going into a government of national unity. But be that said, our family is hoping that there will be steps taken by the government to protect whistleblowers, to highlight the plight of the families of whistleblowers, to consider the feelings of the families of whistleblowers and even whistleblowers themselves that are humble, honest human beings that are standing up for truth and righteousness, and yet being persecuted by those that are driven by greed and a desire to amass themselves exorbitantly financially, and many of them want to do this in a quick time, in a quick period of time. And it is sad that corruption is rife, and so many others are drawn into this net of corruption. And our prayer and our wish as a family is that this will stop and people will come to realize that we need to do that which is right.
Babette is a hero. So I think that's wonderful. We've run out of time for you, but I want to you'll get a last word along with Mary. But before we do Cynthia, I want to talk about Patricia Mashale, who worked as a senior administrative clerk for the South African Police Service in the Free State Province. During the course of her employment, which started in 2007, Mashale noticed and reported on alleged suspicious activities committed by senior SAPS officials. Unfortunately, she was dismissed on February in 2022, and after various threats and threats of reprisals were made against her and her family, she went into hiding. She has still been persecuted by the senior SAPS officials she blew the whistle against, and her family has suffered a great deal of harassment. I want to mention, regrettably, she had to appear in court to defend herself on false charges against her and cannot be with us today. But we want to make it very clear that we stand and support Patricia Mashale. Now we have Cynthia. Cynthia, are you on the line?
Thank you, I am. Can you hear me clearly? My camera is saying that it cannot find it, so I don't want to...
No, it's clear as a bell, 10 by 10. And we want to mention about Cynthia Stimpel. She has served as the Whistleblower Liaison Manager at the Whistleblower House since February of 2022. She is a motivational speaker, sharing her journey as the whistleblower and advocating for positive change. Additionally, she works as a yoga instructor for both adults and children. I bet you that takes some of the stress off, Cynthia. Cynthia is a board member of the National Committee, Defend Our Democracy, and volunteers her time at Accountability Now, Radio Veritas, and various community initiatives. She is also the author of Hijackers on Board, recounting her experiences at South African Airways. Cynthia holds an MBA as her highest qualification and predominantly has worked in banking, treasury, and risk environments throughout her career. During her tenure at SAA, she served as a group treasurer for the last 2 years, and she received several notable awards, including the Citation on Integrity Award from the Air Pilots Association of South Africa, and in 2021, the Blueprint for Free Speech Special Recognition Award and the Ahmed Kathrada Excellence in Leadership Award from the Congress of Business Economics. Additionally, in 2023, she was honored with the Whistleblower Excellence Award and Sherpa Award for her support of whistleblowers by the Public Interest of South Africa. I'll have to say, Cynthia, yours was the shortest introduction. Mary has 6 pages here, which I didn't have a chance to announce on all the awards and all the wonderful things she does. But right now, Cynthia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jane, for that introduction, and thank you everyone who's present. I will start for the interest of time. So I've chosen the title, Why Whistleblowers Are Important, and why whistleblower protection needs more than lip service. I'd like to start off with a quote by Chief Justice Zondo, who is the Zondo of our State Capture Commission. And he states, corruption is a crime against South African people and robs our people of resources that should have been used to improve the lives of the poorest and the most vulnerable in our society. Mine is very short, focusing on speaking out against corruption in our country, why whistleblowers are important, and then why protection is needed for our whistleblowers. So I'd like you to all just take a minute and close your eyes or just gaze into the future. I want you to switch your brain to imagine what could have happened when there was no corruption and when all funds that went to corruption are diverted for the correct things. So imagine, I'm going to use South Africa, but you can use your country, seeing that we placed all over the world, is imagine a high quality education in our schools, in our early childhood development, in our colleges, in our universities. The education is so good that children can read by an early age of 7 to 8 years old. In South Africa right now, children at the age of 10 cannot read with comprehension. They get stuck with certain words. They've not been taught to read very well, hence it impacts comprehension, it impacts learning maths, and it impacts any linear type of reading. Then imagine high-quality hospitals, clinics, where it is fully equipped with all the medical type equipment required, like MRI scans, like CT scans, and various other equipment needed for doctors and nurses to do their jobs to the best of their ability. Imagine that our training, which in South Africa was of an exceptionally high quality, alas, is no longer there because of corruption. Imagine road infrastructure, which may be in your countries that you're living in, but in our country right now in South Africa, our road infrastructure is terrible in that we have roads that have not been maintained, and therefore many accidents are happening. The impact on people's cars and impact on their tires and maintenance of their own vehicles. So we had road infrastructure that worked in parallel with our train and rail system and our air traffic system. Our rail system infrastructure has declined. In fact, it may be non-existent in major cities and areas, and hence the impact of taking freight across the country has impacted on our road infrastructure. So combined with transport, imagine having easy transport, accessible transport for children to get onto buses and travel safely to schools, people to travel safely to their workplaces and back home. Alas, because of corruption, South Africa does not have that. Many of our children are dying in car accidents because they're either piled in our road transport, which is our taxi services, as well as putting children on the back of bakkies, which is a form of transport where children are overloaded, and when there's an accident, these children are thrown all over and killed on impact. Imagine a quality of life for all, that everybody has employment, that everybody is able to have dignity, purchase their own homes, and have a roof over their head. This can happen in our country, in South Africa, if we all start working towards eradicating unemployment. I have slides here which I will just talk about, and I will send my presentation to all of you. Corruption Watch did an analysis, and there's the type of corruption experience in the public sector is extremely high, and they've broken it up into each of our provinces. Northwest, 53%, 30% Northern Cape, 29% Western Cape, Limpopo 23%, 37% Free State, Gauteng 27%. These are all on bribery and extortion. Then on procurement, it's even higher, where it goes 33%, 37%, abuse of power 15%, dereliction of duty 10%. So those are the type of corruption we're experiencing in each of our provinces. So why are whistleblowers important? It's because they are the ones who stand up and stick their neck out, like the giraffe, the icon which Whistleblowers of America uses, the giraffe, sticking its neck out first, stating what the problem is, and then getting killed for it or getting retaliated against. Zondo Commission calculation estimated that almost between 1.5 to 3 trillion of funds has been diverted for corruption. And it was because of whistleblowers that some of these funds have been recouped. So some whistleblowers who recouped 1.6 billion from Eskom. Those were the two ladies of Trillion who gave their evidence, and then through their evidence they were managed to be able to recoup 1.6 billion. With PRASA, Martha Ngoye stopped the Shavambo transaction, which would have cost the organization roughly about 54 million. They've already paid the China rail, so those funds couldn't be recouped. With SAA, with my story, I managed to stop 250 million, over 256 million. And then recently, through the NASFAS investigation that was done, over 700 million was recouped. This states then, why are whistleblowers important? Babita Deokaran, she picked up through her just doing her job to the best of her ability. She found that funds were being paid out under the threshold of 500,000 to certain organizations. To tally all those amounts, it came to over, I think, 89 million, which was almost a billion. 100 million of funds that would have just been diverted, deflected to organizations that had nothing to do with the health, with the Department of Health, with health facilities, with medical equipment, etc. These were funds being paid for skinny jeans, for large amounts of chicken, for couches, for strange areas which had nothing to do with health. But what does the whistleblower suffer? The ultimate sacrifice is when their lives are taken, like Babita Deokaran, like Mas Paco, and like Eric Pena. For those who, others, we've suffered with mental health, physical health, and the impact on your family. The loss of your livelihood, the current job you're doing, and you cannot, many whistleblowers cannot find future work unless they reinvent themselves. You become isolated, ostracized, you are given a bad reputation, bad names. You end up having to pay your own legal fees, which results in huge debt. And on top of that, you are then blacklisted because you're unable to pay anything else. And then there is no physical safety for you. Where do you go? Who can take care of you? Do our legislation work in our various countries? We have a Protected Disclosures Act, which is supposedly well written, but very ineffective, in that there are very many shortcomings in it. There are huge gaps, and it is also not enforced within each of our organizations. So how do we see then the safety for whistleblowers? What needs to be done? The first we're seeing is creating a safe reporting environment within every organization, whether you're public or private, in order that the person who speaks out is not victimized, is not retaliated against, and there are no reprisals against them. The second is probably to have an agency or an ombudsman or an organization that will enforce these laws and ensure that there is a watchdog functionality and that whistleblowers are indeed protected, that their stories are investigated and that there is a resolution for these stories, and that the whistleblower themselves should not be touched, and that they should constantly together and collaborate with other organizational stakeholders to promote safe internal and external cultures.
Cynthia, I'm going to have to stop you there because we're running short of time. And we have one other person. I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap it up. We have one other person following you who is extremely important. So 30 seconds, Cynthia, lay it on us.
No problem. Thank you. And the last piece having seeking reparations and then fast-tracking the whistleblower legislation, not only from a legal side, but together with behavior change, because it's only when you change the behavior in how you treat whistleblowers and how you enforce the legislation can you see change. And then I end with a closing quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," by Mahatma Gandhi. Thank you.
So I wanted to take a moment and we can introduce Shelley Ann and she could tell her own story. She has a statement that she wrote and that she wanted to read.
While they're waiting there, Tony, I want to tell you, Babette is a hero, and she lost her voice. And I want you to know that through you, we can have her voice on Whistleblower Network News, and you can speak for her, which would be wonderful because she deserves that honor. She's a hero. And now we have Shelley on. I'm sorry I didn't get to tell you about Ari. Some people may not know what a hero he is. But because he was with the Caddo Manor, that was an incredible thing he did. But Shelley, I've seen you, I've talked to you. You have stood with Ari. I cannot tell you how wonderful that was and how much that meant to him, that you are his soulmate, his friend, and his defender. Please talk to us about what has happened in your life.
Hello, everybody. I'm Shelley. Hello, Jane. Nice to see you again.
Hello.
Thank you for that introduction. It was very special. Being the spouse of a whistleblower definitely has its challenges, emotionally, psychologically, socially, and financially. However, it is also an opportunity to stand by your values and by your partner in supporting the courageous decision of exposing wrongdoing. My husband, Aristides, witnessed atrocities of torture against African people within his police unit in South Africa. Soon thereafter, he made an internal disclosure to his direct commanding officer and showed him a video clip which he secretly took whilst his unit was engaging in apartheid methods of interrogation, namely that of torture. Unknowingly, that day, I became the spouse of a whistleblower. The day that my husband came home and explained to me that we would have to flee the country is the day I decided that I would follow him anywhere and that we would get through it together as a family. I will never forget the night we left our home. We could tell nobody, not even my parents, nor either of my grandmothers, whom I knew deep down I would never see alive again. We simply closed the door to the life that we knew, with most of our belongings inside, and never looked back, simply with a goal to reach a safe haven. We were extremely vulnerable. We lived a life of fear, sadness, loneliness, never fitting into society like before, and never trusting anyone. We were victims of retaliation, and still are until this day, with blatant lies being published about us. We were both living with anxiety and PTSD without knowing, and had to undergo therapy. We frequently had to change homes in order to feel safe, uprooting our children from their schools, friends, and surroundings. Over the years, there are many sacrifices and difficulties that we have faced, but utterly, my husband has endured the most of it. The public scrutiny with constant retaliation and character assassination via fake media. I have learned most of all how important it is for whistleblowers to have unconditional support, compassion, and love in the trials that they face after they blow the whistle. I would still follow my Ari to the ends of the world tomorrow, even knowing what was to follow. Any advice I could offer to other spouses of whistleblowers would be simply to stand by your partner, to be his or her rock and inspiration, and to be very strong and ready for defamation that's going to come your way. I was always touched by Nelson Mandela's biography entitled The Long Walk to Freedom, which describes his enduring struggle for justice and freedom, and how no matter what, he never gave up. I believe it's applicable too to whistleblowers to be strong and to have perpetual hope that one day the truth will come out and set them free. As for what South Africa can do to protect their whistleblowers, firstly, to stop killing them, like poor Babita Deokaran, who was unluckily enough to lose her life as a result of reporting corruption. Secondly, effective whistleblower witness protection mechanisms should be put into place that actually protect the whistleblowers and their families instead of putting them in danger and making them vulnerable like they did to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelley. You know, you are such a support, and you have so much courage. And your support for your husband, who is a hero, makes you a hero also.
He is my hero. Thank you, Jane.
You bet. Thank you, Shelley Ann, for coming up there. It takes bravery and courage.
I think that concludes this panel.